Hey, Christopher, how are you?
I'm great, and you? How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I've been looking forward to speaking to you. I just finished your book, Talking with Serial Killers, and it was an absolutely fantastic read.
God bless you.
No, really, really good. If you don't mind, just before we start, Christopher, if you don't mind just introducing yourself to the listeners, that would be fantastic.
Well, hi, guys and girls. Yeah, I'm Chris Berry-Dee. I've been a criminologist for several decades now. My speciality is serial homicide, although I do stray into gangsters and mass murderers and spree killers occasionally. I do some cold case work with the FBI in America, one or two odds and ends around the world, including the Philippines and India. But I write books, and that's my career.
Yeah. No, as I said, your book was brilliant, and this is something that we actually talked about when you called me last week. That like your books are brilliant because you pull no punches, and you know the way sometimes with some of these books and stuff, people kind of skirt around the subjects and that. Whereas you go, I mean, it's warts and all with you, which I like.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, the history of true crime writing goes way back, almost 100 years or so, back to the 20s before that. And the old police officers in the old days, and the judges and the detectives, they used to write like they used to write in their pocketbooks.
Yeah.
I interviewed Mr. Smith, and he said to me this and that and the rest of it, and it developed. And even the books written by judges and crime writers at the time were very stiff.
Yeah.
And I'm a great fan of Bill Bryson, the travel writer, and he brings the reader along with him on his journey. And we're normal people. We're not like coffee nosed or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And I like to take, because I've had all these amazing experiences traveling and interviewing this scum, that I like to bring the reader along as if they're like on a coach trip with me, and we're going into the prisons together, and this is what it smells like, and I speak for the people. I always imagine when I'm talking to these people or I'm doing a cold case, how would I feel if it was my daughter that had been cut to pieces and raped and chopped up and like rubbish. And then it gets quite serious when you're talking to these guys. So I try to bring along the reader with me, like you say, warts and all. Let them have the full tin of beans.
Yeah. One of the things that also stood out to me when we spoke the other day, we only spoke for a couple of minutes, but one of the things, and listen, it fucking sums them up, because you turned around and you said, look, these guys that I speak to, they're fucking losers. And that's what they are. They're like, because a lot of the time, these guys, their lives get cast from virtually insignificance. And then they become like, let's pick a Ted Bundy or somebody like that. And okay, Ted Bundy's probably a bad example because he actually had a lot going for him. But a lot of them are coming from virtually insignificant, and then they've got all these spotlights on them, and suddenly they're nearly cast into some kind of a warped celebrity, which is mad.
Well, that's happened with Bundy. You've got so many films about what they call the iconic American serial killer. I mean, people don't even know what the word iconic means. I mean, even Ted Bundy, he was too big for his own boots. If you've seen some of the stuff that I've seen about him, I mean, I went to Tallahassee, I've looked at all the exhibits, the teeth that bit into Lisa Levy's buttocks.
And with
I've seen
children as well.
I mean, I just, that he is scum, and he's a coward. And a guy like that, he wouldn't hit a man because he'd get his teeth kicked in. And I'm sure the guys watching this program would appreciate that. You know, he's too silky smooth. Give him a damn good smack in the mouth and he would have cried like a baby. He only attacked girls, beat them, bludgeoned to death, and people sort of tried to make him into a hero. But he's, like you say, he's a loser through and through.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've sat down and you've sat opposite over 35 serial killers. Is that correct?
Well, it's around about 30, I think, give or take. I mean, Some of the ones it's been correspondence, and I'm talking for years of correspondence, but overall 30 killers, several in this country, mostly in the United States. The Shindy sisters in India are on death row, 1 or 2 in the Philippines, but they're not on death row out there. But yeah, around about 30 total. Mass murder, 3 killers, one-off killers, yeah.
Okay, so you go into a prison. So let's say you're talking the United States, where for some reason that the United States has a disproportionate amount of serial killers compared to other places, which it was something I want to ask you about as well. But in terms of when you actually go into a prison and you're going in there sitting face to face with generally it's going to be a man who's committed like an absolutely horrendous, abhorrent crime where he might have murdered multiple people, men, women, and children, and you're sitting opposite. Like, do you ever kind of have any fear when you're actually going in and you're sitting opposite these people, because you're going in knowing the crimes that they've actually committed?
Well, I'm sure most of your thousands of viewers would have seen the Netflix series Mindhunter.
Yeah, it's a great series.
Super, yeah. The thing is, before you get to interview a killer, you need to know everything about him from literally cradle to where he is now. You need to know his schooling. You need to know his likes and dislikes. You need to know a bit about the crimes, talk to the cops, the judges, the lawyers. You need to know everything. You need to know him like a Russian immigration official. When you go into Moscow's airport, they know more about you than you do.
Yeah.
Because they're nosy bastards. But you've got to know the guy inside out. So you've got to know what makes him tick, what he likes and doesn't like. So when you actually get to the facility, it's really just a formality. It's a case of signing the waiver that if they attack you, you can't sue the prison system. Quite often I've got a film crew with me, and there's a little bit of nerves. I mean, I had some nerves with Dougie Clark, the Sunset Slayer at San Quentin, because he was going ape. And he was shackled in front of me, but many times they're unshackled. But I already know the guy, and he knows me or she knows me because we've had some correspondence.
Yeah.
So a lot of people ask me, and they say, "Oh, I'd love to interview a serial killer, but I'd be scared." And I say, "Well, one, it's a job, so you get used to it. 2, you should be in control." Because he's a psychopath and you should be in control, but you've got to let him think he controls you.
Yeah. And
really, it can be fascinating.
I bet
it can be disgusting for what they tell you, but I've had them brag about Michael Ross, the roadside strangler that I made a program about. I interviewed him, cleared up 2 cold case homicides with him. Sometimes they brag and they laugh and giggle about what they do. But the thing is, the ice cold. I'm an ex-Marine. I mean, I've got ice running through my veins, and whatever they tell me, it doesn't faze me. Because if it fazed you, if you suddenly sort of say, "Oh, I feel sick" or something like that, they can smell it. They can smell your fear, or they can smell your nerves because it's their home. They're like beasts. They can smell it. They can taste it on you. And the thing is,
their bread and butter, isn't it?
I just say, "Well, look, I don't give a fuck how many people you killed. Look, you're not a big hitter. Get on with it. Tell me your story."
Yeah.
And that's the way I write. That's the way I try to write. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, because I remember in your book, and I can't remember which serial killer it was, but I remember that you actually took that approach with somebody, and you were kind of nearly playing mind games with him and said, "Listen, look, you're not a Ted Bundy. You've only killed a few people." And he reacted to that. And he reacted because it's nearly like a one-upsmanship to him. And he's like, "Hang on a second." And then he gave you some other murders.
That was Michael Bruce Ross at Summers Prison. He's been executed since. I interviewed him there several times, once on camera. There were 2 cold cases. There was Zumnok 2, who he killed at Cornell University, and there was a young schoolgirl called Kimberly Logan. He killed 7. He'd only admitted to 5. The Connecticut State Police, New York State Police came to me in my home hotel and said, look, Chris, we really need you to somehow get a confession, because the next of kin are still, and he won't talk to us. And so basically, what I did was I had some paperwork and some photographs and stuff, and I sat down with them, and we had the cameras rolling, and that's what I suddenly said to him, Michael. And he had an IQ of 155. He's a clever boy. And he, like us, he's got glasses. He looks bookish. You sort of man you'd see in a library or something like that. Yeah. Not a pole dancing club, but a library with Michael. And the thing was with him, he was giggling, and I just said to him, look, you're not a big hitter, Mike. Yeah. I said, you've only killed 5. Yeah. I said, you're not Ted Bundy or Henry Lee Lucas or Dougie Clark or Ken Bianchi. I said, you're a lightweight. He said, no, I've killed 7. And that was it. And I said, you're lying, Michael, because you've only committed 5. And he said, look, Chris, you're my friend. I've been talking to you for years. I said, you're a fucking liar, Michael. You cheated me. You only killed 5. He said, I killed 7. I said, who were they then? And then he spilled it. Zunop 2 and Kimberly Logan. So with the Kimberly Logan case, I needed to know something from him that only the killer would know, that was never in the press. Okay. And I had this file of documents and stuff that he didn't know I had. And then I said to him, look, Mike, I said, what did you do with her body? And he said, well, I raped her and strangled her and left her by a stone wall in a little stream or something at Crystal Run. And I said, what was she wearing? And he described it, he remembered it, because they remember their crimes. They masturbate over their crimes time and time again. Michael, 40 times a day until he gets sores on his penis. That's how bad he was. And he gave it up. He gave that crime up. And he also explained how he killed Zunok 2 at Cornell. And so then the police go in afterwards, and then they take a official statement from him. And then there were 2 other terrible crimes he committed on 2 little schoolgirls after he'd killed them. I won't go into that because it's too disgusting. Yeah. And as a result of that, Connecticut State Police, New York State Police cleared up 2 cold cases. He could have got off. He could have escaped execution. They were going to fry him in the electric chair, old Sparky at Summers. Hadn't been used for about 20 or 30 years. Mm. It even had scratch marks and nail marks in the oak arms where you fried.
Yeah, jeez.
But that wasn't working, and it would have cost tens of thousands of dollars to put it right. And they didn't even have an electrician who knew how to wire it up anymore. The last time it was Mad Dog Taborski 20, 30 years ago. So they built a new death row suite for lethal injection at the New Summers facility, which is close by. And if he'd had apologised, literally as the needle went in his arm, that's how liberal Connecticut is. If he'd apologised and shown any remorse, they wouldn't have executed him. Excuse me. But he refused to, and he basically went to sleep, and that was the end of Michael.
Jesus. Like, one of the things that you kind of touched on there, which now I'm guilty of this as well, that like for some reason we as society, and look at the popularity of some of Netflix's series on, as you mentioned, Ted Bundy's one earlier on, or obviously the one that's out at the moment is about Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, and these are wildly popular. And I myself, I'm reading your books and I look at all these things and I'm like, I find these things fascinating. Why do you think society is so fascinated by these absolute monsters? Is it because that they're so opposite of the norm that it's kind of a look into something so opposite of what we are?
Well, no, you probably know, your readers might know, or your viewers might know, I've just written a book called Serial Killers to the Silver Screen. It's all about the movies that are made from real cases like like Silence of the Lambs was a pick and mix of several cases. You've got the DeFeo, Amityville Horror. I interviewed Ronnie DeFeo at Greenhaven years ago, massacred his family in their beds. Why people are interested in crime? Well, if you come to the bottom of that, you go down to Dixon and Doc Green, don't you? The old Dixon and Doc Green TV series.
Yeah.
And then you had De Sweeney and Z-Cars. And it was that which really started to spark things off. And then it's like people seem to like bad people.
Yeah.
You don't get many Netflix series about the Pope, do you?
No. Well, that's the thing. I suppose the Pope isn't exciting enough unless you're looking at the Catholic Church for some of their other misgivings, which people could do as well, I suppose.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's just like a ruler. There's like I always say in my lectures that there's a 12-inch ruler, and the normal people, we're about in the middle at the 6-inch mark.
Yeah.
Right, and the saints are right down at 1, and the baddies are right up at number 12.
Yeah.
And we like things like Hammer House of Horror and horror films, and we're drawn to it. We're drawn to the dark side.
Yeah.
We don't want to go in, but we want to sort of like look through the door and have a peek.
Yeah.
Of what evil is.
Yeah.
And when you're doing the stuff that I've done, or any homicide cops do and stuff like that, you're standing on the abyss of evil. These people are they stink of evil. Yeah. When you go to talk to them, you smell evil. Their eyes, Kenneth Bianchi, I always describe his eyes like a great white shark. They don't blink, they're black. They're devoid of any compassion whatsoever. They don't give a fuck about how the victim's going to suffer, how their parents and their next of kin are going to suffer, or their relations. They just do not care. And when you're getting inside the head of somebody like that, it can be a dangerous exercise. It can mess you up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you're saying that, that's something that I was thinking, Christopher, in the fact that somebody like yourself who goes and speaks to these lowlifes, these monsters who have committed absolutely like atrocious acts against humanity and murdered people for sport, basically, and for their own, whether it be sexual enjoyment or just thrill or whatever, and people are doing, or financial gain or whatever, and they're just doing that and then confessing some of the crimes to you like it's nothing. And we're talking crimes from cannibalism to rape to, I mean, these are pretty bad crimes, and you have to sit and listen to that. So my question to you is, does that affect your outlook on life? Like when I'll give you an example. When you're out, I don't know if you have kids at all. Do you have any kids?
Yeah.
Okay. So you as a father, when you're kind of looking at your son or your daughter, and if they're out, are you kind of thinking, knowing how evil the world can be, because you have a front row seat into seeing just how bad it can get? So do you ever kind of take that home with you and kind of get a bit paranoid about, right, this is out there, and you're nearly overprotective as a father? Or
no, not at all. Honestly, I was in the Marines for a long time, and I've seen some things in the Marines, and I've traveled the world. And in the Philippines last year, it was a homicide of a working girl, a young prostitute. Bless her, she had to go out and hook for money. She's beautiful. She's 34, 2 kids, two Western guys abducted her, took her from a nightclub. She was doped up, chopped her head, smashed her head with a cleaver. I went to the hospital, and the last thing, I mean, the local cops, homicide cops, invited me to go along because they're having a bit of trouble profiling the possible killer. They got him, or 2 of them. That affected me because as she closed her eyes for she died with one eye open with a tear coming down her cheek.
Yeah. Jesus.
And she was so beautiful, and she was having to sell her body to pay because of the problems of finances out there. And you know, all these girls have got to earn a living one way or the other. God bless their souls. I feel so sorry for them, really. They put themselves very vulnerable, like Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, and all these people, and Stephen Wright from Ipswich. To see a beautiful young girl, because I've seen photographs of her in life, and then to see her on a mortuary slab with a meat cleaver caved in her skull. And it was first thought that it was a road hit and run. And then the McCarthy police the homicide police are a bit like cowboys, really, but they're brilliant. I mean, you go in the police station, there, cups of tea, drink, booze. You can pick up a Kalashnikov and walk out with it. Yeah. I mean, they're hard cops, these Filipino cops. They shoot people on the street just like that. Great guys. They knew me. They knew my work. I just said, well, is that the only trauma on her, the head? And they said, yeah. I said, this is not right, because she was at this nightclub apparently with two guys, but her body's found 12 miles away, the other side of Manila. How did she get there? I said, he couldn't take her in a taxi, run her over. It had to be a car. I said, I want to see the body properly. And the minute they pulled the sheets back, she'd been tied up. Jesus. She'd been restrained with ropes round her ankles, tied up, and beaten to death. They got the guy, who was a German, 60-year-old. They found out that other girls came forward to say they were beaten by him, working girls, and then it transpires that he'd also killed the second girl, her best friend. That was unsolved. So that affected me for a while when I got back to the UK. That was around Halloween last year. In fact, it affected me so much I had to delete the stuff from I never delete photographs or crime scene documents or documents ever, really. But I had to delete it because I felt like crying on that little girl.
Yeah.
But normally when I'm with these people interviewing them, I don't give a shit what they tell me.
Yeah, yeah. And have you ever come across somebody, and this might seem a silly question, but have you ever come across somebody in like your normal day-to-day society, and where you've come across somebody and you're kind of looking at somebody because you do what you do and you're obviously a criminologist? Do you ever come across somebody and say, like, meet somebody in the public and think they've got traits that they'd worry you?
That's a fabulous question. Without fear of plugging another one of my books, I've recently written a book called Stalking, Homicidal Stalking.
Okay.
Which imagine that you're a lady, a girl, and you're in a supermarket shopping, and she sees a guy looking at her intently, and she just shrugs it off. Then a week later, he's sitting behind her on a bus, and the hairs go up back on her neck. And stalking is often, not in every case, but stalking is part of certain killers' MO. They get such a thrill out of stalking, knowing they sort of control that person's life, really, at the end of it. That is a scary thing. And it is a book that people should read. But women are very savvy, you know. The women are clever.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this to impress your lady viewers, but they have another sense somehow. With the Kayamiga killings with Ted Bundy, he'd gone to a sorority dance thing at the university in Tallahassee, and several of the women remember afterwards seeing him standing on the stairs looking strange. And they give off a vibe.
Yeah.
And with men, a woman's got this instinct that the guy's not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
He's sly or smarmy or something. There's something about it that a woman can sense that the man is not good.
It makes them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And if a woman senses that, she should follow her instincts.
Yeah.
Instantly.
Yeah, yeah.
because it's a gut feeling. It's that almost a cop. You know, a copper gets a gut feeling about a criminal being the one that did something.
Sure.
Got to follow your inner thoughts. I don't like this guy. He might be buying me too many drinks. He might be looking at me in the wrong way, or I've seen him before. He seems to be hanging around here. That is like a trigger. That I would say that is a little bit of a warning sign.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? It's amazing the way your instincts actually. A lot of the time with things like that, your instincts can be so accurate, and that they can. I mean, like what you're saying, people should listen to them more, because I mean, it's amazing that we actually have that nearly like a sixth sense, you know.
Yeah, it's like you're tuning into. It's like having a radio on. And sometimes there's another channel that's there, but you're not listening to the news.
Yeah.
You know, and you really need to sometimes just switch on to that. You know, men that beat their women, narcissists knock their women about and stuff like that. Get rid of them. Get them out of the house.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. They're dangerous. And but like for me personally, I don't go around worrying about, is there a killer wandering around my neighborhood? But there again, they are. I mean, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah. No,
but you can't spot a serial killer. People, when you get all these guidelines on the internet, it's all crap. You know, how to spot a serial killer. You can't. The only time you spot a serial killer if he attacks you, and that's the last you can hear of it.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm with you. And with serial killers, we have, like, a lot of the time, because of horror movies, we kind of look at serial killers and you're thinking, oh, you're picturing this monster. You're picturing somebody like Henry Lee Lucas, who actually looks like a monster. But then and Otis Toole, yeah, but like the two of them, I mean, if you were thinking serial killer, they look like a serial killer. But then on the other hand, you've got guys like, we mentioned him already, Ted Bundy. You've got guys like that who are, I mean, he looks like the guy next door. He was a lawyer. He was an educated guy. He was a handsome man and whatever. And you've got this guy who's, I mean, it's virtually impossible to spot something like that.
You're scaring me now.
It's true though, isn't it?
You scare the fucking pants off me, you do.
No.
Henry Lee Lucas with his gungy eye. I interviewed him it was on death row at the time at Ellis Unit, where that's where the old death row was, just outside Huntsville. I interviewed him. He was thick as a plank. He was dead. Yeah. I mean, he had no intelligence whatsoever. He was the most boring serial killer I've ever interviewed. I like somebody that's got a bit of life in them.
Yeah.
You know, if I have to prod some life into them, I know what buttons to push, like Arthur Shawcross or Kenneth Allen McDuff down in Texas. I know where, if they get a bit boring or a bit slimy or oily, I know exactly what buttons to push to piss them off. And that's when you see the beast emerge. So they could be whining about innocence. I never did this. I would never hurt a child. Oh, dear, you know, I'm innocent. I shouldn't be electrocuted. I've turned to God. Bullshit. Then I just turn on them and say, oh, by the way, you know, your local sheriff, like McDuff's case, Larry Pamplin, who he hated. I said, I've been talking to Larry.
Yeah.
What did Larry say? I said, oh, I can't tell you. It's only from him, Ken. You know, not from me. Then you see them get angry.
Yeah.
And I said, well, all right, don't get angry with me. I say, but he told me that you screw little black boys in prison. And he went ballistic.
Oh, God.
So then you see what you've got is this whining, whinging, big 6'6" monster whining, worried about my mum, blah, blah, blah. And then you poke him with a stick.
Yeah.
You see him erupt.
Yeah, like a volcano.
Because you're in control.
Yeah.
And you can calm them down just as quickly.
Yeah.
It's quite. It can be great fun, honestly. It can be
Oh,
good fun.
I'd say, yeah, and it's yeah. So, speaking of Henry Lee Lucas, the person who, and you know what, this is actually just for my own personal interest, right? Because I remember my family used to go over to Florida quite a lot as children because my father's job, and there was a lot of conferences over there. So I remember we used to go over, but a few years previously, John Walsh, the man who is the presenter on America's Most Wanted, his son Adam Walsh was kidnapped and murdered in Florida, and the main suspect in that was Otis Toole, if I'm correct. Do you think that he actually did that? Because one of the things that I was listening, because I've watched Henry, the Netflix documentary, and I read your book, and obviously I know that Henry Lee Lucas, he palled around, or he was whatever involved with Otis Toole, and that Henry used to nearly, like, he basically fabricated a lot of the crimes that he said he did, didn't he?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I interviewed Henry, I mean, he's a weedy little guy. I mean, you know, and it's almost like a cartoon figure in some horrible ways. But his opening line to me was, "I done killed no one."
Yeah.
But he followed that up, and this was all on camera, on film for TV. He said, "Well, I killed my mum, but then I killed my sister because she was going to tell the police I killed my mum."
So he's just as thick as shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The only murder he ever got convicted of was what's called the Orange Socks murders, that all your viewers will know about because they're all crime interested in this sort of stuff. It was a young girl found in a ditch by a interstate or freeway, naked except for a pair of orange socks. They never found her identity.
Yeah.
And that was the only homicide that Henry actually was convicted of, although it's claimed he killed 100 or more. But that's again, I mean, probably about 20 to 30. I mean, they screwed everything. Animals, chickens, anything that flew or floated or walked, they would have sex with. I can tell you this much. There's a lot of frightened chickens in Texas.
I'd imagine so. And the two of them, like, I'd put it this way, neither of those two boys, I wouldn't like that to be the last face that I saw.
No, I mean, I can't speak for Otis at all because I never interviewed him, but I can only speak for Henry. Yeah. And I did a lot of interviews with law enforcement, county sheriffs, travelled the dirt roads of Texas, visiting the crime scenes. I mean, it's like Bonnie and Clyde still down there, you know.
Yeah, I bet.
Wild West still there.
Yeah.
Great people. Texans are wonderful people. They open their doors to you, met some fabulous cops, fabulous lawyers, some bench judges, the whole caboodle. But Henry was thick. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I bet he was. He looks thick and he sounds thick, so I believe you. but I mean, this is a question you must get asked a lot, but you've obviously spoken to a lot of serial killers and sat across them and looked in their eyes. Who is the serial killer that, when you sat opposite, gave you the chills, and why?
To be honest with you, not really any of them, because I know where I'm at and what I'm doing. I think the most manipulative and possibly the most dangerous, for many, many reasons, would be Kenneth Bianchi, the Hillside Strangler, who I interviewed at the Washington State Penitentiary at Walla Walla.
Yeah.
When I sat, I was locked in a small cubicle with him, and there was a little wooden table between us. That's all. He was unshackled. And we'd had a fallout in correspondence, and he really wanted to talk to me to tell me how bad I was. I'd stitched him up, actually, caught him out on a whole load of lies, the Bellingham murders. I was screwing up his appeal. And I sat down and he just looked at me, and I could feel evil coming off of him, and he didn't blink. He just looked into my eyes. He was eyeballing me. He's a big guy as well. I'm not messing about. He's a big, fast-faced guy.
Okay.
So I got up and I walked round to his side of the table and I put my arm around his shoulder. I said, come on, you miserable fucker, give Christopher a smile. And he practically smiled.
Did he?
And I had an hour's interview with him. And the minute that hour finished and the guards unlocked the door to come and take him out to his cell, he turned around and snarled and pointed at me. He said, you come near me again, I'll rip your fucking head off.
Jesus.
But I did.
Yeah.
It was snowing. I went out onto the exercise yard. They were out and they were walking along. I was with, obviously, a correctional officer. And he walked past me with a donkey jacket on and a baseball cap pulled down. And he walked within feet of me and he didn't look. And then the third time I saw him was in his cell in a special housing unit and he'd always written to me and he'd said, I've got the best cell in the place. I'm a trustee. I'm the most important prisoner of 2,000 inmates, blah, blah, blah. You want to see my cell someday? It's like a palace compared with other people. And I went up there and he was laying on his little bunk. You couldn't swing a cat round in this. So.
Yeah.
And the guard said, look, Christopher, don't walk over the yellow line because they will spit and throw shit at you. So I walked down the tier and then I walked back to his cell. I think it was number 7 or 8. And I walked across the line. I walked up to his cell pass. I said, Kenny, this is Christopher, come to see you in your big house.
And what did he say?
Well, he had headphones on. He was listening to his radio or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And I shouted at him, and he went berserk, threw himself at the bars, screaming that he was going to sue me for breaching his human rights or something. And then the guards came up to the cell and said, look, Kenneth, you've got to be a good boy because Christopher's got permission to run around the prison and you must be nice to him. Don't be a naughty boy, Kenneth.
Yeah.
And started swearing at them, so they dragged him and put him in the hole for a month. So what I did after that, I was all around Washington State and Bellingham. I'd done the Hillside Stranglers cases down in Los Angeles, and I did the 2 Bellingham cases, Karen Mantic and Diane Wilder, and everywhere I went up there, and I went steelhead fishing up in the islands up there, San Juan Islands, and I sent him a postcard.
Yeah.
I wish you was here, Kenny.
I'd say he loved that.
You know, I mean, Arthur Shawcross flipped a bit, but I calmed him down quite quickly, and he was sitting right opposite of me with film crew, but he got a bit angry, but I calmed him down. But yeah, it's almost like you're going to win the game.
Yeah.
You know that if they threaten you, they're not going to really hurt you because they're cowards. They'll only kill children or old ladies or people who are helpless.
Yeah.
You come back to that Bundy thing I said at the beginning of the show. Bundy would never hit a man because if a man smacked him back, I mean, if Bundy went into one of your local bars and started mouthing off, he'd get his head kicked in.
Yeah. Well, he's just a coward. He's a predator.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. Like, so when I look at these serial killers, oftentimes it's kind of weird because I look at them and you've got. I nearly put them into 2 groups where I put like. There's some kind of freaky looking where they seem like they're very low intelligence, like Fred and Rose West, like Henry Lee Lucas, those types of people. And then you've got the other side of it that you've got these highly functioning, and they seem to people with very high IQs, like your Ted Bundys, like you mentioned somebody else there earlier on who had a very high IQ as well.
Michael Ross, yeah. One thing that your readers or your viewers might want to watch, and they might want to remember this name, Colonel Russell Williams. Colonel Russell Williams. He was in charge of Canada's largest Air Force base with the highest security clearances on the planet. Used to ferry the Queen around when she went there and everything else. He was a serial killer and a rapist at night, and yet he was a colonel in charge of a massive Air Force base. He was in charge of procurement of aircraft for the Canadian Air Force Base.
I saw them getting the confession out of him. I watched the documentary. Was that you got the confession? No?
That was Detective Sergeant Smythe.
Yeah. No, I remember looking at it.
This is where some of these YouTube interviews are fantastic for getting inside the killer's head, because what Jim Smythe used was what the FBI called the Reed technique. Yeah. That is a more buddy type of come and sit down, have a cup of tea, chat. Sorry to have brought you in here on a Sunday. I know you normally go to church, Russell. Can I call you Russell? Is that all right? Or do you want me to call you Colonel? It's that watching, and your viewers will be enthralled to watch the way Detective Smythe takes him to pieces over a little time, manipulates him. And you've got Jodie Ann Harris, who stabbed and shot her boyfriend in the shower in like something out of a scene from Psycho. Jodie Ann Arias, Arias, highly intelligent, turned into the bitch from hell. But yeah, you've got highly intelligent serial killers, but you've got Colonel Williams, who used to stalk and go into these girls' homes when they were out and arrange their underwear on their beds and then steal some and go home and photograph himself dressed up as a woman. And then he'd kill them and do terrible things to them. But yeah, he was a colonel in the Air Force. And makes you fucking wonder. They do psychological tests to see. I mean, they must have known there was an inkling that he was a psycho, but they never figured it out. Same with Harold Shipman. All his psychiatrists and doctors and nurses he mixed with, and nobody knew he was a serial killer.
Yeah.
Dodgy, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. Like with somebody like Harold Shipman, like it took someone kind of saw something, that somebody spotted something. Oh, somebody where he was going getting he needed somebody to sign off on his death certificates or something, wasn't it? And she kind of said, "I'm signing far too many of these." That's crazy.
That's what's fascinating about serial killers. It's what I call a very little quick story. I was in Manila a couple of years ago, and we went to what is called a Manila Ocean Park with my partner. And it's one of the biggest aquarium places in the whole of the Far East. Beautiful place. And there was a creepy crawly section there. And there were like these little boxes with, like sand in them and little trees and twigs and stuff. And I've got glasses on, I'm looking at this and it says so-and-so insect or whatever it is. And I'm looking, I can't see a fucking thing in here. Maybe it's empty. Yeah. Maybe they're taking it out to give it holiday. And then I go to the next one and I see some green leaves and nothing and some sand and two little black pinholes looking out the sand. I said, nothing in here either. They ought to close this exhibit. But there was like a praying mantis in there and there was these little things hiding in the sand waiting for a bug to come along. And when I got back to England, I suddenly thought about that and I thought, that's what serial killers are like. Yeah. They're invisible. Yeah. Harold Shipman was invisible. Yeah. And this colonel was invisible. And yet there he was, like a creature waiting for some prey just to walk in or walk by or stalk it, and got it. Yeah.
That's with someone like Harold Shipman, and to be honest, with all of them, it seems to be kind of like a power thing where they want to be in control. And let's say as soon as they know, the game is up, they've been outsmarted, they know that, like, say Harold Shipman, once he realized, shit, I'm done here, he stopped talking, didn't he? And he was like, right, that's it, the game's over. And before that, he was carrying this very confident demeanor where he was like, okay, and I'm fully in control. And then as soon as the balance of power shifted, he said, I'm out.
Yeah, and he hung himself.
Yeah, fucking coward.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. You see, imagine going to a party where you got some jerk off mouthing off all the time about I'm the local doctor and look, I've got this and that. You can smell it. You think us normal people would look at him and say, you're full of shit.
Yeah. No, you're right.
That's it. You just get it that guy's a phony. He might be a good doctor, but it's something right. What's he going on about? you know, all this and that for? And but unfortunately, they're invisible.
Yeah, they are. Speaking of that, like they say that about 1% of the population are psychopaths, and obviously 1% of the population don't go on murdering people or don't become serial killers and that. And they say that there's a much higher percentage of psychopaths in the business community and high achievers in that. Why do you think that some psychopaths escalate to commit murder and then others just function with just being maybe not the best human being, but don't go to the lengths of murder?
Well, let's just take that step by step. Let's have a look at our lovable Donald John J. Trump at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing a book called Psychopath in the White House. I mean, I tell you what, a lot of publishers turn down. They're frightened he's going to sue them.
Yeah.
The minute that guy, before he got elected, I looked at him, I thought, you're a narcissist, extreme. You're certainly a sociopath. And when you say about not killing anybody, he's just killing the United States Constitution. Mm. He's torn it up and wiped his backside with it. He's letting all his cronies off the hook with pardons. He doesn't care a damn about anybody else, because you notice he hires and fires like it's a game show. Yeah. That's a psychopath. Whatever way you look at it, it's a psychopath. A high-end achiever who will come unstuck. Yeah. We've seen it with bankers, you know, Fred Shred. These people are highly successful, but eventually they come unglued. Corporate psychopathy, you could call it, I suppose. But then you flip it and then you say, well, what? Yeah, but some go on and commit murder. It's because some psychopaths like John Scripps, the Englishman from the Isle of Wight, who I watched being hanged in Singapore years ago.
He scared the shit out of me, that guy did, when I was reading about him, because you know the way when you're reading about the Americans, and some of it seems so distant from maybe my own reality or whatever, whereas that guy was a British guy and he was going to Thailand and he was going to Mexico and he was going to all these places and preying on backpackers and holiday makers. That was scary.
Yeah. I went out there and I didn't go to Cancun, but I did go. I mean, I did do all the rest of it. I recovered a lot of drugs for HM Customs investigations, special investigations through talking to John in Changi Prison. Yeah. But I went out there and I did the whole lot. I mean, I've been to the hotels where he killed South African Gerard Lowe and chopped him up, put him in bin liner bags and dumped him in the Singapore River. I went to the same hotel on Nilly's Marina in Phuket, and the same room as he slept in. I talked to the people, saw his name in the register there. That's what he eventually got caught. I interviewed Detective Superintendent Gerald Lim, who arrested him. I did all the trial stuff, and then I went to interview him on the Monday before he was executed. And he was executed, I think, on my birthday. And he said to me, "They won't hang me, Chris, because I'm British."
Yeah.
But he did put up a fight because they hung him between two Thailand bandits on a triple scaffold.
Okay.
And he refused to, well, I think it's probably in the book, he refused to be
dragged there, didn't he? He got dragged there, and when his head nearly came off when he was hanged then, wasn't he?
Yeah. And anyway, the police gave me a presentation mug with the emblem of a man hanging from a tree. Present. But it's grim stuff. I mean, it's not, I know, but I mean, they broke John's jaw. And then at his funeral at Singing Drive, his cremation, the two Thai bandits, I interviewed the Thai ambassador, and then I had a TV crew with me, APTV with me, and they were opening the coffins and kissing the bodies inside, and John's head was almost torn off.
Jesus.
Because he refused to be weighed for the drop.
Yeah, and then there's too much pressure.
Yeah, and I mean, he had a broken jaw and I think broken nose, and he looked a right mess. But there again, not what he did to these people.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. I mean, I don't really feel sorry for him.
No, I mean, I had this podcast the other day with an American guy in Florida, and we were talking about capital punishment. I said, look, if you go to Singapore, everywhere it says AWAS or whatever it is, warning, don't do drugs, don't do murder or anything like that, because we will hang you irregardless of your creed, colour, sex, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
John's sort of semi-intelligent. He was a fairly clever bloke. You know, he'd done some bird in his time. He knew the risks. Yeah. And as one Long Island judge said to me years ago, Judge Thomas Stark, he's now retired, or he's now dead, but he told me, he said, Christopher, society makes the rules.
Yeah. We
have to live within these rules. Otherwise, it's anarchy.
Yeah.
He said, if somebody breaks the rules and commits a capital crime, they know what the consequences could be. Yeah. And under those circumstances, all Singapore did was provide the rope.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. No, you're right.
Another thing I would say, to make it simple, I say to people, look, if you park on a double yellow line, you get a ticket. Whose fault is it?
Yeah, no, exactly. Listen, he wrote his own song, and I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, if you're going around doing the type of crimes what he was doing in places like Singapore or in Thailand, and if you get caught, the shit's going to hit the fan over there. And look, I mean, for the crimes that he committed, I don't think anyone can have any sorrow for the man, you know.
No. But the thing was, he was taught butchery skills when he was in prison on the Isle of Wight.
Yeah, I heard that.
Just remember his victims.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, no, he was a strange guy. But like, with the career that you've had, do you ever kind of look at it? And again, this might seem kind of a bit of an odd question, but do you ever think, I would have loved to sat opposite that serial killer, just for the simple reason, not because of their celebrity or something like that, but because of certain characteristics where you would have seen like a challenge, or so say somebody's got a very high IQ, or say that you would have loved to kind of attack somebody with a certain tactic, you know?
Not really. I mean, Gacy. One interesting one is Keith Hunter Jesperson, the Happy Face Killer. I find it I think I find it more fascinating that so many women fall in love with these people.
That's weird, because you know what? When I was looking at Night Stalker the other night, the Richard Ramirez one, and the amount of groupies, and some of them are good-looking girls, and they're going following this guy who would, and like I think they actually say it during the documentary, going like, these girls don't realize that this guy would look at them like dinner if he's out. You know what I mean?
Same with Bundy. Although Bundy did have some girlfriends he didn't kill, just be fair, earlier on. Yeah. But Keith Hunter Jespers, for instance, 6'6" interstate trucker, out on the highways and byways, hauling his truck load, his Mack truck, whatever it is. Big guy he was. He is. And he would pick up what he called lounge lizards, with the prostitutes that were at the truck stops. One of them, how he got caught was a girl, I think, called Angela Sabriz. He took her and he strangled her and raped her, and then he tied her with rope to the back axle of his rig and dragged her 12 miles alive until she was dead, about 12 miles across some snowy pass. Yeah. And all that was left was the end of the frayed rope and fragments of skin. And about months later, some road cleaners were cleaning, and they found what they thought was a thigh bone or something, and they thought it was an animal, it was a roadkill, but they took it to their supervisor and he thought, oh, it looks like a human bone. And then when they got it back to the police station, they found a very tiny silver type stainless steel pin. There was nothing to identify the girl, nothing. It was all gone. And
all taken by animals picked up on the road.
But this pin had a serial number under the microscope, had a serial number, and they could trace it. She had a hip, and that's how it caught him. Now he sent me hundreds of letters of photographs of murder groupies, and one of them, and this is quite disgusting, he said, "Oh, there's one here. Look," and I opened it up. There's all these photographs, a bit like you saw with Night Stalker, that sort of thing, Bundy type. Lovely girls, some whores and some pretty girls, and some obviously deranged, and There was a letter and it had a lipstick mark on it. But the name had been, the name was there, and I thought to myself, I know that bloody name. I could say, no, don't say that. She's writing to him. Clever girl, clever American model. And at the end of the day, I said to him, who gave you that lipstick mark? He said, that's not lipstick, that's menstrual blood.
Oh, my God.
Oh,
my God.
Ladies, don't listen to this man's podcast.
There's some fucking crazy bitches out there, isn't there? What the fuck?
So, about Ronnie DeFeo, they've all got their murder groupies that want to go in prison and shag them and have babies with them. And surely, on one case, there was a 70-year-old woman from Hastings or somewhere. And when I interviewed her, she was like in a wheelchair, grossly overweight, and she had a parrot. A budgie guy it was, that I looked at had been hit by a hand grenade. The budgie was more as neurotic as she was, squawking. Yeah. And she was writing love letters to a black guy in Florida who described himself as Florida's finest chocolate.
Yeah.
And she was in love with him and sending him oodles of her pension.
Oh, Jesus.
Hoping one day that she could get on a plane with a wheelchair and go and marry him in prison.
Oh, God. Jesus. Yeah, there's some crazies out there. There really is. I mean, one of the crimes, and the serial killer in the book, because I kind of knew a little bit about him beforehand, but one of the serial killers that really fascinated me was Arthur Shawcross.
Yes.
I found him to be a very interesting character, but he's like something now that you'd kind of think of nearly out of a horror movie. And in terms of, am I correct in saying that you were actually thanked by law enforcement for solving one of his unsolved crimes as well with a child? Is that correct?
Yeah. What it was I did two cold cases. I cleared up with Michael Ross, that Zung Nok Tu and Kimberly Logan. With Shawcross, he was serving 240 years to life. He'd already got released from prison after killing two little kids, but he'd only admitted to killing one. And he got 23 years. He did a plea bargain. He was out. He worked his way into the prison psychiatric unit and learned all about psychobabble, and he was counselling other inmates.
Yeah.
And then they went before the parole board, and they let him out, and he went on to kill a lot of hookers. But with him, I cleared up the murder of Kimberly Logan, who was a deaf mute, black mute, who was found stuffed under a trailer. And it was in between a lot of his other homicides, and the Rochester police really wanted to sort of clear that one up, but they couldn't, because they only had a description of a man that running from the area that was similar to Shawcross, and the man was wearing a red T-shirt. And when the police interviewed Shawcross, he never produced. They couldn't put a red T-shirt on his back. I got a confession out of him for Jack Blake because I'd met his sister. She was looking out the window every day, thinking he was still going to come home. Bless her. She had her hair done. Jack Blake
was the kid. He was the child that tried to jump over the fence, wasn't it? And Arthur Shawcross. Correct me if I'm wrong in this, but he confessed to eating his genitals and
his heart. Yeah.
Fucking hell.
But I cleared that one up because I got him to confess to that, and that's when he got a bit upset, but I calmed him down. But Kimberly Logan was interesting because when he was in jail, Shawcross had a very large girlfriend called Clara Neal, who I think had about 13 kids from about 13 different husbands. And she was big. I mean, Arthur liked big women. He was like Benny Hill. He liked big women. And I interviewed her with the film crew, went and sat with her and said, look, and he was getting married to her and he'd asked me to be the best man at his wedding and blah, 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 all this sort of bull. And then I said, have you got any photographs of you with Arthur years ago? Like, she's always lovely with the kids, Chris. She's lovely. Look, I've got my photograph album out. And there he was sitting there wearing a red T-shirt.
Jesus.
End of story. Cleared it up.
You're done.
Cold case done. By an act of God. she showed me this photographs.
Yeah, yeah. And just innocently showed you, not thinking that there'd be repercussions for him.
No.
Yeah, that's good luck as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a fluke. That was just a fluke. That wasn't clever on my behalf. It was just one of those things that happened that, oh, shit, there's a red he's got. And when I'd asked him about it on tape and everything else, he said, never wore a T-shirt in my life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just the right place, right time.
And he said he didn't kill Kimberly Logan, the girl under the trailer. I forget no, not Kimberly Logan, the girl under the trailer. He didn't kill her because he said, oh, I never killed her because I hate blacks. I wouldn't touch a black in my life. Yet all the time in his correspondence, he said he's not a racist.
Yeah, yeah.
He wrote a cannibal's cookbook. I've got his cannibal's cookbook.
Jesus.
The only I haven't tried it out yet, but
stay away from that one. Hey, listen, two last questions for you, Christopher, right? And because you've been very generous with your time. First question is, there's probably people listening to this who are in the house by themselves and are probably going to be double checking the doors and the windows and looking under the bed and that. But I mean, firstly, one question that I kind of alluded to earlier on, the United States has kind of, it seems to have more, am I right in saying that they seem to have more cases of serial killers than anywhere else, even taking population and everything into account? Is that correct? And why is that?
Well, Germany, middle of the two last wars, you had Fritz Hamann and another one, and I mean they were monsters. I mean, you know, but Germany's had a few serial killers. We've had a few serial killers here per capita. I think America's pretty high up in the stakes. But interesting, isn't it? You don't get serial killers in Singapore, or you don't get serial killers in Malaysia, and you don't get serial killers in the Philippines.
Yeah, why?
I think a lot of it's to do with Western culture, the climbing, you know, the trying to succeed. Filipinos are the happiest people and most generous and loving people on the planet. And they live, I mean, I talk to them every day. They love their kids. They go to school. They suffer terribly with weather and starvation and disease and stuff, yet they're still happy. They're not materialistic. The farther you go west, the more materialistic you get. And when you go to Russia, like I do, or Ukraine, they look after everything. I mean, Russia's had a couple of serial killers, fair enough, but they treasure what they've got. But the more you get to America, it's a throwaway society, and that echoes down to throwaway lives.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
You've just seen that this month with the rioting and the terrible things that happened at the state capitol, where these people are like redneck idiots with no morals or common sense.
Yeah. And
whether you like Trump or not, there's no need for that sort of behavior. And that's why I think America, and I predict this, is going to fall apart at the seams. They've always been the big mouths, loud shirts. You go to Russia, they hate Americans. They hate them. They love the Brits. Yeah. The Irish, the Welsh, they love us. Scottish, they love us. Americans, loud shirts, loud mouths. You hear them a mile away in a bar.
Yeah, yeah.
And that echoes there. And I talk to quite a number of quite influential Americans all the time, and I tell them, you've got the most neurotic society on this planet.
Yeah, yeah.
And they agree. They all buy guns. What's the point? How free is a country, the land of the free, when you've got to go to school tooled up?
Yeah, that's crazy. It really is. Like, it's selling, the fact that they sell, you can buy a semi-automatic pistol in somewhere in the equivalent of Primark or something like that. I mean, that's just fucked up. And you're asking for trouble there. And then you've got all these people saying, well, it's my right to have a gun. And it's like, man, you don't need that.
The thing is, when the founding fathers gave their citizenry the right to bear arms, they were talking about muskets and flintlocks. Yeah. Now, you can't commit serial murder in a school with a flintlock pistol, because the time you've reloaded it in 30 seconds, the teachers are going to be banging your head into a desk.
Yeah, yeah.
What the founding fathers didn't say, well, predict 100 years later that you could go out and buy a bloody well Kalashnikov that fires 500 rounds a minute and blast everybody to death. But the Americans are so thick, they don't think, oh, but that's not what the founding fathers meant.
Yeah, yeah.
And now they're right. I mean, my boy goes to a public school and he comes out, he doffs his cap at the guy who's walking across the street, first name terms, all the other kids wave to crossing, wave to the drivers, walk off. In America, you go, they're all dressed in SWAT stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not the land of the free.
No, it's no. Like it's some of the stuff that for me, I think there's nearly 2 or 3 Americas, because I think and you know what, this could be something that's actually like places like Los Angeles and New York and Boston and Chicago and Philadelphia. That's a different country nearly to your Middle America and your. Yes. Like and it's, but you know what, Christopher, I think that's a large part of the society's problem over there, and why you've got the whole Trump thing going on at the moment, because you've got nearly half of the society that live in Middle America that feel so fucking disenfranchised and so cut off, saying, hang on a second, like using the thing that's going on at the moment where there used to be huge coal industry and coal mining, and that all got taken, and now a lot of those towns are just dominated but with unemployment, and there's rife drug use like heroin and crystal meth and stuff, and that brings huge society issues. And then these people are given hope by somebody like Trump. I hate Trump, but I can see why he can appeal to that common denominator.
You've made a brilliant point, but that comes down to this predator waiting to strike, looking for prey. He knew, when he went for office, he did it really to promote himself. But he could see a weakness. He could talk to the Rust Belt people.
Yeah.
He could talk to the ones scratching around looking for corn. He could promise these young agricultural students at these rallies, I'm going to make you the greatest heroes. That's what they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
But that sociopath has destroyed it. No, but you've still got a handful of lunatics, dyed-in-the-wool lunatics, who are powerless because they work in a shoe shop or mum and dad's popcorn shop or whatever it is in Shittsville, Kentucky, or wherever the place is, and then these people think, oh, I've got a flak jacket, I can pretend I'm a policeman, I can go shoot people, I can go to the elections and threaten people.
Yeah. No, you're right.
That doesn't happen in England, does it?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And you know what? A lot of stuff that happens there doesn't happen in a lot of places. But I think that's a different conversation. But the question I was going to ask you there was, how likely are we of bumping into a serial killer? Is it like winning the lotto backwards, or you know what I mean?
I'll tell you what you asked just now. You said to me, a lot of my viewers would be scared if they're living on their own tonight. Well, after this interview with you, I'm going to go and hide under my bed.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
I always end off podcasts or TV programs, wherever it is, on a smile and a prayer and stuff. I say, look, don't take it heart to heart. The chances of coming across a serial killer are pretty well zero.
Yeah.
But if you're a female and you're out drinking with other girls and you decide, I think I'll stagger home and get some fish and chips, don't do it.
Yeah.
Because there are taxi drivers. You know what London's like with Uber, and I will say it, Uber have got the highest sex conviction rate for taxi drivers in the world. Uh-huh. Do not, under any circumstances, walk home alone. Go home, or get your mum and dad to come and get you, or get a registered taxi or friends to take you home. Because if you're walking alone, there are predators out there that are subconsciously hunting for prey.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's not in their mind all the time. It's like Michael Ross. He wasn't always thinking about, I've got to kill her or aim for her. He would come across somebody and it was in his case, it broad daylight every time, but he would then snatch them. And that's the only thing I would say to women: please, please, mums and dads and girls, do not go out partying and think you can walk home, because unfortunately in today's society it is not safe. It's a terrible thing to say, and I know I get criticism for it, because we talk about freedom and we should do what we want to when we want to, that fear of our lives.
There's bad guys out there.
The only advice I would give anybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely makes sense. Last question. You've spoken to a lot of these lowlifes. I've said it a few times. You've spoken to these serial killers. The crimes they've committed, some of them as bad as you can imagine. Horror movie stuff. They've been sentenced to varying sentences. Do you believe in the death penalty, Christopher?
I'm going to tell you this. We all live in different jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm.
I was asked this when I was down there when there was the O.J. Simpson trial. He didn't get the death sentence, but no, I was kept up. People keep asking me, "What do you think as a Brit? Do you think about death sentence?" I say, look, and I think I answered it really earlier with John Scripps and the judge in New York. If Texas is sick and tired of having its elderly children butchered, raped for a handful of dollars, and they've had enough, and they say, look, you cross the line, we're going to kill you, we'll execute you. That's their business.
Yeah.
The other thing I point out is this, that you have got a very big anti-death penalty lobby in the United States who say, well, it's cruel to execute people when it's revenge. But you ask them, any of them, what would happen if you suddenly found your 3-year-old daughter butchered by the side of the road and been sexually abused and her head chopped off? How would you feel about the killer then? You're going to turn around and say prayers for him? Yeah. I'll tell you what, they'll pull the switch.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're right. You see, that's for me. I think, for me, I mean, for a lot of those guys, and I can think of a lot of other people with the crimes they've committed, I'd have no qualms about pushing the button or injecting them myself.
But the thing is, we don't want Americans telling us that we should bring back the death penalty or keep it or whatever.
No,
that's none of their business, and it's none of our business to interfere with different jurisdictions around the world.
Yeah.
The only exception being the Middle East, when they throw gays off of buildings.
Yeah, or
and set fire to people,
or women's rights and stuff like that.
They need to nuke the whole of the Middle East to sort the problem out.
Yeah. But for me, what I was going to say there was, I mean, the only way that I'd be kind of anti the death penalty in some way is it doesn't happen often, but when they get it wrong and they put someone to death for someone who's innocent, and let's be honest, there's a lot of people who have fucking died under the sword or they've been hanged, or they've met their maker through crimes that they didn't commit, and that's fucking scary.
Yeah, Joseph Odell III, a good friend of mine, who wrote to me for years. He was sentenced to death, a lethal injection. The police knew he was innocent. They fitted him up with the DNA, and 2 days before they executed him, I spoke to him on the phone. He was crying. Even the Pope got involved, begging them not to kill him because and the police fitted him up. And there's Fred Waterfield down in Florida. He's not on death row anymore, but his mate David Allen Gore, who I spoke to about on the Florida podcast the other night, that I believe Fred Waterfield's innocent. I actually believe that Dougie Clark, the Sunset Slayer, didn't kill all the people that he said to have. They claim he killed.
I was going to ask you about him because like it seems in the book. Okay, first of all, do you believe that that Douglas Clark killed anyone?
I think he was in a car with that Carol Bundy, the boggle-eyed Carol Bundy, when she was given. I mean, I think he was present at that crime scene when she
shot him in the
shot him by accident. Yeah, but she chopped off Jack Murray's head in that camper van.
Yeah.
I mean, and all right, there was Exie Wilson who was decapitated, and apparently, I mean, I spoke to the cops that arrested him, Leroy Roscoe amongst them. I went down there and everything else. There's something about Jug's story when you can find it. I think my uncut interview with him at San Quentin on Wikipedia. I think you go down the bottom where it says sources, a Douglas Clark interview, and he comes in, he's shackled, and I come in scratching my private parts because I'm a bit nervous, and he's shouting and screaming. And we had Judge Stuart Nam. They were a great interview. He looked crazy, he looked mad, but there's a lot what Dougie Clark says adds up.
Yeah, it seemed that way, and it seemed like she was the liar, and that the LAPD there, wasn't it, that they were a little bit corrupt and taking a few bribes there.
So, yeah, I take your point. I mean, there was the case of Derek Bentley and Christopher Craig in London in the 50s, where Derek Bentley was hanged and Christopher Craig, who pulled the trigger, shot PC Miles in the forehead, died. I wrote a book called Dad Help Me Please. It made the movie Let Him Have It with Christopher Eccleston. That book got Reader's Digest #1 bestseller, fictional bestseller the year after, and it got Derek Bentley a posthumous pardon. There are people that get hung, but by and large, let's put it this way, if the ballistic evidence puts that gun in your hand at that time and you've got that victim's blood all over you, who did it?
Yeah, that's the thing, man. That's the thing. Like, yeah, I don't know. But look, we'll leave it there. Christopher, you are an absolute gentleman. And you know what? I'm going to work my way through your books because, as I said, talking with serial killers was absolutely fantastic. And I can't wait to read the rest of your books.
I'm going to leave you on a happy note.
Okay.
Right. God bless you, and no nightmares, please.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much, and lovely speaking to you.
All right, mate. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.